I thought that the whole world was a concentration camp. And I concentrated on one single thing, how to survive one more day.
The Nazi advent to power, because the Nazi program could fund the very programs that they had in mind. The Nazis gave them political support, financial support, and conversely, the psychiatrists gave the Nazis a medical justification for their genocidal policies.
Something like 40% of German psychiatrists had joined the SS by 1933. They weren't forced into the SS, they just joined it naturally, because the beliefs were very, very similar.
Paul Nietzsche, the T4 director, declared,
Das Aussortieren in den Konzentrationslagern lief etwa genauso ab wie in den Nervenheilanstalten. Und mit selbigen Erfassungsbögen.
To establish a new scientific racism that justifies oppression and exploitation and racism.
In fact, racism is inseparable from the roots of psychiatry.
The entire history of psychiatry, beginning with scientific conclusions that were made in the 1830s, was an effort to prove the intellectual inferiority of African Americans.
Benjamin Rush is the father of modern psychiatry. And he is the one that gave us the term nigritude. He said that all blacks have inherited this disease, and this particular disease, it caused them to be inferior. In addition to that, it was the reason why it was very important that blacks remain segregated and separate from whites so that whites did not inherit this disease.
After slavery was abolished, psychiatric racism not only persisted, it intensified. The American Journal of Psychiatry officially proclaimed that Negroes, as descendants of savages and cannibals, were ill-prepared for higher civilization, while their pseudo-science eugenics stepped up its racist activities.
There is a clear and long and intimate connection between the eugenics movement and the Ku Klux Klan.
Быть верными коммунистическим идеалам, убежденно, с революционной настойчивостью, претворять в жизнь ленинский завет, учиться коммунизму, трудиться самоотверженно, по-коммунистически, всей жизнью своей, утверждать на земле дело Ленина, дело партии. Ленемся!
The Soviet regime demanded absolute loyalty. Those who did not toe the party line were considered dissidents and labeled enemies of the state. With no more than a whisper to the secret police, they would vanish into one of these special psychiatric hospitals. Despite the risks, these so-called dissidents put their ideas of freedom into action. Today we see the consequences. A barrage of drugs, each one targeted at an invented disorder that is backed by an arbitrary diagnosis found in the DSM.
The fact that it is couched in the language of science without necessarily having any of the scientific data or underpinnings to justify it is as threatening as anything we've seen today.
And psychiatry's latest and most expensive ploy to fool the public by imitating legitimate medicine? Brain scans.
We can scan all the brains we want to. The fact that we see changes in different people's brains, changes in functioning, doesn't mean that we've discovered anything that has its origin in the brain. It just means that we're seeing changes, but it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the brain.
Psychiatrists and psychologists use the DSM to label 450 million people worldwide as mentally ill. As psychiatric influence spread across America, it also spread throughout the world. Behind crisis after world crisis, you'll find the handiwork of psychiatry. Example: this is how terrorists are created. In the wake of 9/11, Osama bin Laden was characterized as the mastermind behind the attacks.
If you implant enough memories of specific kinds, you can shape and change the nature of human thinking, and feelings.
And it was thought to be a kind of ultimate weapon, because what greater weapon could there be than control of the human mind?
You can control minds, and you can move people around, particularly when you control their lives. It's easier to control their minds.
Whatever was done to make this person more manageable would be simply called a treatment. And the sad reality is that many of these so-called treatments were, in essence, torture.
The near-drowning devices that were developed in this period, for example, must have been appallingly frightening. For example, one device involved putting the patient into a coffin, closing the lid, and dumping it into a bath of water, and then opening it up and trying to revive the patient.
Did you want some sheaves? The sheaves have gone.